our channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. According to information, we have the plan, a peaceful plan that was proposed by the United States of America. Yesterday was rejected by the European countries and by Ukraine. The meeting took place on the territory of London. Later, the UK Foreign Secretary Lammy stated that today I held a meeting with Yermak, Umerov, Vance and European national security advisors at Chevening House to discuss the next steps towards peace in Ukraine. The UK's support for Ukraine remains unwavering, and we continue working to achieve a just and lasting peace. The sources reported that they rejected the plan that was proposed by J.D. Vance. Later, we got additional details from Zelensky himself. He detailized everything the European countries discussed. Zelensky said that he will not accept the swap of territories. Zelensky confirmed that Russia demands the withdrawal of the Ukraine armed forces from Donbass with the freezing of the front line in the Zaporozhye and Kherson regions. Now Putin wants to be forgiven for the seizure of the south of the Kherson region, Zaporozhye, the entire territory of Lugansk region, Donetsk region, and Crimea. We will not allow this second attempt to divide Ukraine. That was stated by Zelensky. Europe and Ukraine put forward their peace plan with red lines ahead of the Alaska summit. According to the Wall Street Journal, the plan proposed by Kiev and the European requires a ceasefire before any other step. So nothing has been changed since April of 2025, as you can see, from Zelensky's side and European side. Mutual exchange of territories, not unilateral concessions. So this is very important demand of European countries. If there are going to be any exchange of territories, this must be equal. So Russia will take, for example, or Ukraine will give the Russians the Donbass region, and Ukrainians will demand the same amount of square kilometers for Ukraine and to force the Russians to fall back, let's say from the Zaporozhye region, which will allow the Ukrainians to restore control over the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. Most likely this is exactly the plan of Zelensky, or at least something that he can get of this situation. And another important thing is that mandatory security guarantees for Ukraine, including possible accession to NATO, and we understand that this will never be accepted by the Russian Federation. So we see that there are no changes in relations between Russian Federation, European Union, European countries in Ukraine, but at the same time we see huge progress between the United States of America and the Russian Federation. Anyway, I think that it's time to finish speculations. It's better to wait for Friday of the next week, when we're going to see real meeting between the President of the United States of America and the Russian Federation. Obviously, during this week, we're going to see lots of interesting things, especially and most likely we're going to see another probably escalation carried out by Ukrainian side or European countries with the purpose to ruin the entire negotiation process completely. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. We have lots of very interesting updates, and first let's talk about the Zaporozhye direction. If you remember, yesterday we discussed that Ukrainians carry out counter-offensive operation in this region, and based on the updates that we got yesterday, we made some changes on the ground. We had additional updates and geolocations that confirmed Ukraine counter-attack that allowed them to restore control over some territories. And today, this morning, we got additional details about the situation in this area. So as you can see, the Ukrainians counter-attacked the settlement of Kamenska from the settlement of Stepnogorsk along M18 road, and as a result of this counter-offensive, the Ukrainians managed to take under control several tree lines and to dig in deeper. So the situation is very difficult in this area. We see that Ukrainians are counter-attacking. They understand that most likely they will not be able to avoid the exchange of territory, so that is why it's better to improve their positions as much as possible before this process, because most likely we're gonna see some exchange of territories, not maybe equal exchange, but exchange is going to happen. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Pokrovsk direction, because most likely the most important updates are coming exactly from this area. As the previous days, there are very heavy clashes are still taking place in the southwestern part of the city. During the previous 12 hours, we haven't received anything that can confirm additional progress on the ground of the armed force of the Russian Federation. Several sources reported that currently there are very heavy clashes, especially in the southern, southeastern, the southwestern part. start. So the Russians are trying to outflank, to outmaneuver, to outsmart Ukrainians in the area of the Pokrovsk citadel. This is a very important and strategical position, but we see that Ukrainians still hold their positions in this area, and the Ukrainians are not going to fall back from this territory. So the clashes continue in this area and most likely will continue for the next several days. But the most important updates are coming from the northeastern part, and currently it's already a northern part of the Pokrovsk agglomeration direction. As you can see, the map has been updated significantly based on reports of different sources. First of all, let's compare the map between the dates for a better understanding of the situation. And this is the situation by the end of the 9th of August of 2025. As you can see, this is the territory, approximately the territories that were already under complete Russian control according to different sources. And by the morning of the 10th of August of 2025, the Russians improved their position significantly. There are several important advances on the ground. And first of all, and according to several pro-Russian resources, the Russians managed to secure the village of Sukhetskaya and to move further in the western direction to take under control the railways to the northwest of the settlement of Rodinska and physically cut the road TO 515 between the settlement of Rodinska, the Pokrovsk agglomeration, and the city of Dobropolye. So basically today, according to several pro-Russian resources, the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to cut one of the most important logistic lines to the north of the city of Pokrovsk. Furthermore, as you can see, the Russians secured the settlement of Sukhetskaya, and when talking about Sukhetskaya, this information was also confirmed by pro-Ukrainian resources. The Ukrainians are saying that, but after that, the Russian armed forces advanced again, now into the area of the mine near Rodinska, bypassed Surove, and captured Sukhetskaya. So we believe that these days the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation will confirm this information as well. So as we can see, the Russians are about to encircle the Pokrovsk agglomeration completely. One of the most important supply lines were cut by the Russians completely. Now Ukrainians still have possibility to support their contingent along M30 road and further in the northern direction, also in the area of the settlement of Dobropolye. So this is the only road left for the Ukrainians, but obviously this road is already under complete Russian FPV drone and artillery control. Ukrainians suffer huge losses, and we see without any chances for them to restore the situation. Now let's move further. According to information we have, also according to several pro-Russian resources, the armed forces of the Russian Federation improved their position significantly in the area of the settlement by the name of Dorozhny, or the railway station by the name of Mertsalovo. This is very important and basically strategical position, a railway station, as you can see, a lots of buildings, lots of facilities, and this can serve as a very important strategical position to the north of the Pokrovsk agglomeration, which will serve as the main point where the Russians will repel any possible Ukrainian counter-offensive during the major offensive operation in the area of the city of Pokrovsk. Furthermore, and the most important, the Russians managed to improve their positions significantly in the northern direction, managed to outflank the settlement of Novoshakhova, to outflank the settlement of Vilna, and to approach for as close as possible to the settlement of Dobropolye. According to this configuration of the line of combat contact, the distance between possible positions of the armed force of the Russian Federation to the north of the city of Pokrovsk and the settlement of Dobropolye is already less than 10 kilometers, which means that the Russians have already established complete FPV drone control over this territory a long time ago. So Ukrainian logistics has been ruined completely, and this information also was confirmed by several pro-Ukrainian resources. The Ukrainians are saying that logistic on this road was destroyed completely by the Russians without any chances to restore. Furthermore, we see that the Russians are focused to move further in the northeastern direction towards the Slaviansk, Kramatorsk, Konstantinovka agglomerations. This time the Russians are trying to outflank the settlement of Shakhova from the west and the settlement of Volodymyrovka. So based on this configuration of the line of combat contact, we see that there are lots of villages and settlements that used to be under complete Ukrainian control are currently cut off from the main line and supply and support. We see lots of pockets, most likely lots of groups and contingents of the armed forces of Ukraine were caught and cooled by the Russians by these attacks. Another important thing that we need to understand that, first of all, we are talking not about the progress on the ground with the regular army of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. First of all, we are talking about sabotage and reconnaissance groups that managed to get so deep inside of the territory of Ukraine and the Pokrovsk region. and the Russian forces continue advancing further in the northwest and the northeastern directions. So, summarizing everything, we see that the Russians currently are tasked to take under complete control everything to the east of the settlement of Dobropolye, along the railways until till the villages of Sofieivka Teretska. This foothold, this strong foothold, will allow the Russians to encircle or to cut and cordon two big cities at once, the Pokrovsk agglomeration and the city of Konstantinovka itself. So the situation for the Ukrainians remains tense, and currently it's very difficult to understand how exactly the Ukrainians are planning to get out of this situation. Furthermore, I would like to remind you that almost in 5 days we're going to have another meeting between President Trump and President Putin, and most likely the Russians will try to improve their positions and their cards, their negotiation positions as much as possible, and most likely by this time the Russians will try to break the entire defense of Ukrainians completely and to create a turning point in the situation. As for the Konstantinovka direction, today the second day in a row, we continue receiving updates that the Russians secured the village of Sherbinovka. As for now, this information was confirmed just by different mappers, mainly neutral mappers. Anyway, we are waiting for a report for the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation. Maybe today they will confirm this information, and if they do this, we will color this territory in Russian favor. Ukrainians still control the settlement of Kliban-Beg, but as we discussed in the previous videos, almost every single day they try to evacuate this area using the small groups of forces with 2 or 3 soldiers trying to move through the Kliban-Butska water reservoir further in the northern direction with the purpose to save their soldiers. But Russians control this territory, and Ukrainians during this process suffer huge losses. Now let's talk about the Liman direction. We have additional changes on the ground in this area as well. Today, the Russians managed to improve their positions once again, and according to information we have, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to secure almost 50% of the settlement of Serednya. This information was confirmed by neutral mappers, and this information was confirmed by pro-Russian resources. So the Russians are trying to finish the battle for Serednya and Karpovka before the beginning of a major battle for the settlement of Shindrigalova. We see that despite the fact that Ukrainians carry out in the past several counter-attacks in this area with the purpose to stabilize the situation, we see that they still haven't managed to achieve significant results. At the same time, the Russians continue offensive. Slowly, step by step, they are taking more and more territories under their complete control. So we see that the major battle for the river of Nitrius has begun, and the Russians are about to finish the battle for this territory in their favor. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes on my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.